We're in the book, the wonderful book, Fields of Compassion. How many here are actually going through the book and reading it? I think we have copies of it now.
Okay.
I think we do. I got told that they did. How the new cosmology is transforming spiritual life. And we're in the chapter 6, called Emerging Capacities. Put my glasses on while I read this. Andrew Combs said, when you get over yourself, a lifetime's project, and you see beyond your own ego, you discover that who you are is not separate from the very impulse that is driving the creative process. And you begin to understand that as that impulse, you are definitely here for a reason. And we said last week, the reason was, I am here to awaken to Allaha, the kingdom of unity. Every time I share my gifts with the world, I become filled with the presence of the sacred oneness, reconnected to the all, the ultimate power and potential, the one that has no opposites. This kingdom of heaven consciousness, the kingdom of God, the queendom of God, is not coming in some future date. There are people hoping that somehow in 2012, God's going to magically appear, take away all of our problems, and give us what we think we want and need to be happy. That's not going to happen, because everybody has a different view of what that looks like anyway. That's not going to happen. You and I, in this moment, have to decide to be all we want God to be. God will not save us. God doesn't see us as separate. It's one presence and one power. That is all that God sees as what we are. We were given permission to then go and do what we will in this world, always remembering the sacred oneness. Every teacher from every tradition shows that to us, demonstrated that to us. God won't save us. We ourselves must become all that we hope or want God to be. That's the second coming of the Christ. It's a collective, that's a perfect spot, a collective awakening to who we truly are. And that's what we're awakening to now. That oneness. Our talk today is called Oneness Evolution. We're in the middle of a oneness evolution. We are evolving and awakening to who we are. In this book, she talks about a study done by Cook and Greuter, I think is the name of the person. I love when the scientific research is showing the same thing that we've been talking about all along. She talks about a research into the human evolution of consciousness and how it's growing. And when the evolution of consciousness is lifted up to a certain level, it's based upon what's been before, but it takes it to a whole nother level. And even though it may seem like you're repeating the same things over and over again in your life, you're not. You're remembering who you are sooner, you're awakening quicker, and you are evolving, even though the same things keep coming back up again. So in human consciousness, she looks at a study that has certain stages and phases to human evolution. The first phase, of which 80% of the adult population on the planet is part of, that first stage is called conventional. Conventional. Most conventional people, 80% of the adults, you ask them what life is about, they will say that the world inside is different from the world outside. That the outside world is part of some pre-existent condition. The world is filled with objects outside of me that are different from what's going on inside of me. The average person, their viewpoint of the world, and by the way, your viewpoint is very important. For how you view the world to be, it will become for you, and what you believe your God to be, she, he, it, will manifest for you. God always says, yes, yes, yes. So if we believe that God is separate, or that what we see outside is separate, we break things into subjects and objects. There's thinker and thought, not the same. When we see defined objects for our manipulation and control, we don't feel a sense of connectedness or oneness to anything. We just feel separate from everything that's outside of ourselves. Those of you who are sitting in this room have had moments of awakening from that dream of separation. That's why you're listening to the message that we're sharing today. You've had moments of realizing that's an illusion, that I'm not seeing the world the way it is. I'm seeing it the way I am. I'm seeing the world through the projection of my own thoughts, words, deeds, and habit patterns. That's the filter through which I see the world. And most people, like Paul in the Bible, see through a glass darkly. And we keep seeing those things projected back onto the screen of life. The world is a perfect mirror reflection of our own internal state of consciousness. So you're here, you're ready to hear that. You've evolved to at least listening to the fact that there's a bigger way through which we can see and view our world. When our view is small, and you all know about people who you've met, Daisy, who have a small viewpoint, a little tiny way in which they view the world. They become very threatened if you don't agree with their world view. I grew up the only grandson, Dora May Company guy. You've heard that enough already. And my grandfather was the head of the dynasty of the Dora May Company, where the money and the wealth was. And when I think about that money and wealth and the amount of money it was, it's so nothing compared to what people are doing now with money. People on the stock exchange make more money in one day than my whole family's estate was worth. But back then, in the 60s and 70s, it was a lot of money. In the 80s, it really was. So my grandfather made my dad look like Mother Teresa. My grandfather ruled the Dora May Company and the family's energy with an iron fist. He had a viewpoint of the world that was very small and very tight. And if you wanted to get your hands on any of the inheritance, the money and the wealth, you'd better fit into that viewpoint, or God help you. And so my dad, when he divorced my mother, who was Jewish, my grandfather never forgave him. My grandfather never forgave anybody. That wasn't what he was doing in his lifetime. His life was not about forgiving people. He was not an example of that in this life. He was a perfect example of the other choice that we can make. And when my dad got divorced from this woman because he was playing around with other women, my grandfather never forgave him. So when my dad got married 3 more times, he never told his father, my grandfather, that he got married. It was a secret. You know the viewpoint that keeps secrets? Because you don't want people to know what's going on. And so I, as the only grandson, even though my expansive consciousness had grown a little bit, I still wanted to get my hands on some of that inheritance. So I didn't share my story of how I got married. And I already had 3 children with my grandfather. Because, you know, there might still be an opportunity. And my father said, don't tell him, don't tell him. I'm warning you, don't tell him. Warning, warning. So the 3rd wife called us on the phone, Adriana, and said, your grandfather has 1 more week to live. I hadn't talked with him in probably about a year, honey, maybe. Maybe years. Maybe
10 or 15.
Maybe 10 or 15 years. He was totally out of my life when I left the family business. And I decided to call him up on the phone. I said, it's Richard. He said, how you doing, kid? How you doing, kid? And I said, you know, for some reason, I believed the viewpoint that I was supposed to keep my life a secret from you. And I've always regretted that decision. And I want you to know about my life, my family. I want you to know that I married Maureen Sullivan. She's not Jewish. She's a beautiful, beautiful, compassionate, loving, kind woman. She's a midwife. She delivers hundreds of babies. She's just the most amazing woman I have ever met. I am so blessed to have this kind of energy in my life. I have 3 children. One of them is Morris. She's 17 or 18. I adopted her from Maureen's first relationship. She's my child. She's more like me than my other 2. An amazing, amazing woman she's becoming. And then there's Alethea. Oh, Alethea's just beautiful, Grandpa. Beautiful, beautiful person. And then there's Kristen, our daughter who has a terminal illness. She's going to probably die soon from that. But we love her while she's here. I want you to know, I'm a Unity minister. I came out of the closet. I'm a Unity minister. I teach oneness and love and compassion and forgiveness and kindness. That's what I'm doing. I love being a Unity minister. My life is wonderful. I am so blessed, and I wanted you to know that. We've been on the phone now for 20 minutes, and he's not said one word. You never talk to Joe Levy for more than about 18 seconds. A minute was a long conversation. When I got done, he said, "Thank you for telling me that, kid. Thank you for telling me that story." Got off the phone. He died 3 days later. I got to share that with him. You see your viewpoint? You don't need to wait till you're on your deathbed to expand into a oneness greater than your own little tiny thought system that you get stuck in. We don't need to do that, do we? Those of us who are standing here on this solid ground of these teachings, we don't want to do that anymore. I get a feeling like you and I, we live in two worlds at the same time. There's the part of us that's got a foot in the awareness of who we truly are. Unconditional love, isness and suchness. We spend moments feeling that deeply. And then there's the other foot that's in the world of appearances, that's dancing in the world of form, in conditions, in situations, in circumstances, and challenges. And we move in and out of those two worlds a lot. We spend a lot more time sometimes here than there. But the truth is, we are people at the doorway right now. This particular time in consciousness needs people to stand at the doorway to usher in this age that's coming now, to be able to be here and speak to the oneness that we come from, no matter how far into a far country we wander. You and I stand in both worlds. And it doesn't mean that we ignore the physical life that we're living. No, not at all. We are still part of the whole catastrophe of everything that goes on. I don't feel things less. I feel things even more. I'm more involved with everything. And yet, because I have this place in me that can step back, I don't get quite so caught in the drama. In the book, she calls it the 10,000 things that rise and fall. Actually, that's a Zen statement. She talks about the sorrows, the joys, the sadnesses, like in Maureen's poem. You take it all on. You become fully alive, not less alive. Your human body becomes a vehicle for divine energy, and you see oneness in all forms, even in those things that look separate, and you're able to deal with other people's viewpoints. You spend more time when you're in this state of consciousness, being aware of your internal state of being as much as you are in your external expression of it. You spend a lot of time going inside and looking at what's going on inside of me. Not what are people not giving me, but what am I doing now inside? You spend more time being more concerned with that than what you see in the world. That makes a huge difference. It means you're willing to look at your judgments of other people. You're willing to look at getting stuck in conversations and fights about other people's viewpoints, especially with the elections coming up. Bumper stickers. People already have signs on their yards. Judgment, judgment, viewpoint, viewpoint. You begin to look at those viewpoints. And what is this in me? After we left you on Sunday, we went to Seabrook, to Charleston, to the Ministers' Conference, UMass, Unity Ministers, Mid-Atlantic States. And ministers on Monday are tired people. We gave at the office. We are dying. We're cellularly tired. So there's 30 tired people sitting in this room, and we're sharing our personal stories, which I don't mind the personal story. But somewhere about the fourth person, it went from the personal story to the church story. And I just, at this point, was not interested in a sales job about the churches. That was for the next day after a good night's sleep. And people started to talk about their DVDs, the songs they're writing, the books, the classes. I just started to feel like, oh, I can't listen for one more minute. It went on for 3 hours. And my oneness circle became a strangulation around my throat. And when I went into my bedroom, I was, you might say, a little steeped in some big judgments about everybody. But like we are here, you always get to do a redo. If you're invited to these teachings, the thing will show back up again, so you can look at it again real quickly, if you choose to. So I go to sleep in my little judgmental huff, and immediately, boom, I'm in the middle of the circle of the people who were just sharing. And I'm looking at each person in the circle. I'm in the center. And And I'm listening to them to tell the same story they just told. But this time, what I'm saying to them is, thank you. I'm sorry, Ho'oponopono. Thank you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Every one of them told me the same thing they just said, but seen through the eyes of oneness, it becomes not an opportunity to separate, but to join and feel my incredible connection to everyone. Good experience. Yeah, the knower and the known became one. And then I got up and I went out and I played outside on the beach. And I don't know if you know Seabrook. Have you ever been to Seabrook? Now, Maureen and I, we have been with whales and dolphins, and we've been with manta rays and sea turtles in Hawaii. You know, you can't impress us a whole lot with a lot of nature or ocean stuff. But I'm walking along, feeling this sense of oneness and connection. And these dolphins, I've never seen them get so close to the shore as they do in Seabrook. That they're literally, I'm serious, Maureen, no lie. The dolphin's right where Kuan Yin is there. And it seems to be following me. This bottlenose dolphin is following me. And I went, no, you're just, you're deluded. You're in bliss. It's not following you. And then I did this, I went, that's the other way. And guess what? This dolphin was playing with me. This dolphin was running up and down the beach with me. I'd go faster, it'd run faster. I'd stop and flash over on its belly, roll a few times, and look at me right in the eye, and go back the other way. This happened for at least 45 minutes. And some local people came and they said, well, they love to play with humans on this beach. They do this all the time. You always think when it's happening to you, it's just especially for you, because you're spiritual. Because I'm in oneness, that's why they came to me. They don't know that. So they do it with everybody, man. Don't get too full of yourself. And that's an important thing to remember. Not to get too full of yourself as you do this spiritual work. She gives us a warning on this from the study. Be aware of the spiritual ego. How attached we can become to our spiritual high position. She says this: even if we understand that letting go of our attachment to the known will bring freedom from familiar kinds of suffering, attempts at doing so are ineffective and often lead to intractable paradoxes. The more one becomes attached to the idea of non-attachment, the more firmly one becomes fettered. The more one is conscious and proud of one's psychic powers, ego-transcendent quest, the more clearly one's ego has been given power again. Yes, well, I've been Course in Miracles for 24 years. I've been doing the daily word since 1907. I'm a oneness blessing facilitator. I have no judgments of anyone anymore. I am just in to oneness. Oh, I serve the homeless bread every day. I am so spiritual. I'm actually a space being. They're coming to get me soon. There it is again. The spiritual ego. That's one we watch. Nothing wrong with that. You just become aware that you're doing that. That is in itself just another viewpoint. And you don't want to get attached to that either. Because friends, there are going to be good days and they're going to be bad days. And there's going to be time when you're aware of your suffering, and then there's going to be time when you're just suffering. You don't want to beat yourself up when those days are upon you. And then you realize, well, everyone has this. So now I can open up to compassion, which is very important. In this particular chapter, she calls people who are on this journey of expanding their viewpoint, evolving to their own sense of oneness. She calls them, isn't this interesting what she calls them? She calls them unitives. Unitives. Unitics? Unity? Unitives? It's a scientific word now. It's now in a study. Charles Fillmore 100 years ago. Unity? Unitives. Unitics, I'll use that word, have nothing to prove and no need to achieve anything or be anything other than what is present in the moment. They cherish difference and diversity, seeing every piece as necessary and part of a mystery-laden whole. Judgments and their accompanying shoulds have dropped and been replaced by acceptance and appreciation of all that is, no matter what the point of view or level of consciousness. The unitic sees happiness and unhappiness as part of the necessary, temporary, and endless fluctuations inherent in the human situation. Instead of seeing life in a dualistic way, where some things are appropriate and desirable while others are inappropriate and undesirable, the unitic experiences the world as a place where all opposites arise together and go together. The unitic watches as positive states turn to negative states, after positive states, endlessly necessary, part of the experience of oneness. I'm at the gym yesterday after doing our oneness course. I'm standing in the corner of the locker room, and there are two guys having a very loud conversation about their particular political viewpoint. And I'm watching them have their viewpoint. Some of the things they're saying are actually quite accurate, but their conclusions, as far as I'm concerned, are very different from mine. And I'm listening to them, and they're going on and on and on and on and on. And then at a particular point, one of them says, I hope we're not bothering you or pressing you too hard with what we're saying. And I said, and I meant this. This was the moment. I said, you know, it's an amazing viewpoint you have. I have one too. And I said nothing else. It's just a viewpoint. You've got a viewpoint. I've got a viewpoint. Your viewpoint brings you to certain conclusions. Mine brings me to other conclusions. That's all it was. And I went, hallelujah, freedom. I'm sorry, too loud. I didn't need to defend my viewpoint. I call that a good day. Because sometimes the very worst things that happen could be the best. And I'm not here to judge anything, just to allow my own evolving consciousness to continually include those I agree with and those I disagree with. Let's go to our lesson summation for a moment, and we'll take a look at a few things here. When you get over yourself, and you see beyond your own ego, you discover that who you are is not separate from the very impulse that is driving the creative process. You begin to understand that as that impulse, which you are definitely here for a reason. God will not solve our problems. You yourself must become all you think God is. If you want more wholeness and purity and love and light and oneness in the world, then you are invited to give that gift to others and increase it in yourselves. It's a participatory universe that we live in, and we participate in it with each thought, with each word, and with each action that we take. Let's close our eyes for a few moments, shall we? At the end of each chapter, she shares a wonderful blessing, and I love these. It's called a prayer. God of all creation, you call each of us to evolve, to recognize that you hold all that is in your loving embrace. As we grow in your love, may we learn to hold others in an ever-expanding embrace as well. May we see the entire sweep of history as your self-communication calls us to awaken to who we are in you and who you are in us. In the mutual embrace that we share, may we together hold the entire cosmos, each and every person, each and every creature, in a way that nurtures and sustains and calls forth the gifts that are given for all. May each of us participate fully in a personal evolution that transforms and is transforming us and is transforming the world. The great gift of doing our part, not just knowing about the queendom of unity, but giving with our hands to it, with our thoughts and our words and our deeds and our actions. We are grateful, for in this moment we've been called for this purpose. for this we say thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And all the teachers, join us. Say, we've been waiting for you. Go out there and be my disciples. Yes, yes, yes. Blessed be.